I've always been a night owl, which is why working the graveyard shift at a gas station off Interstate 95 didn't bother me at first. It was a small, isolated spot about 10 miles from the nearest town. Most nights, the only company I had was the hum of the refrigerator, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, and the occasional trucker coming in for a refill of diesel and black coffee. But after what happened last month, I don't think I can ever work a night shift again. It was a Tuesday, around 2:15 a.m. The roads were dead silent. I was sitting behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, when a beat-up sedan rolled into the lot. It didn't pull up to the pumps. Instead, it parked right at the edge of the darkness, just barely illuminated by the streetlights. Two men got out. One of them, a tall guy in a hooded sweatshirt, stayed by the car. He leaned against the hood, staring directly at the store. The other man, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, walked briskly toward the entrance. When the door chime rang, I put my phone down and put on my customer service face. "How's it going?" I asked. The man didn't answer immediately. He walked to the back of the store, grabbed a cheap energy drink, and walked to the counter. He seemed jittery. His eyes weren't on me. They were darting around the store, checking the corners, looking at the security camera monitor above my head. "Just this?" I asked, scanning the drink. "Yeah," he mumbled. He fumbled with his wallet, dropping a few coins on the counter. But he didn't leave. He stood there, tapping his fingers on the glass countertop. Every few seconds, he glanced at his watch, then looked out the front window toward his friend by the car. "Hey, listen," the man said suddenly, his voice changing tone. It became overly friendly, almost desperate. "My buddy out there, his car is acting up. I think the battery died right as we parked. You got jumper cables? Or maybe you could just come out the side door and give us a hand. We'll just need to get it rolling." I looked out the window. The guy in the hoodie was still there, arms crossed, staring right at me through the glass. Something about it felt wrong. Why park at the edge of the lot if you need gas? And if the battery died right as they parked, why didn't the lights dim? "Sorry, man," I said, pointing to the company policy sign on the wall. "I can't leave the store during a shift. Insurance rules. I can call a tow truck for you, though." The man's friendly demeanor cracked a little. He leaned closer, invading my personal space. "Come on, kid. It'll take 2 minutes. You don't need to call anyone. Just come out the side door, give us a hand, and we'll be gone. Please." My stomach drummed. It wasn't just the request, it was the urgency. He wasn't asking for help, he was trying to move me. He glanced at his watch again. "I can't do that," I said, my voice firmer this time. "I'm calling the tow truck." The man's eyes narrowed. He looked at the window again, and I followed his gaze. The man in the hoodie, the one who'd been watching us, was gone. The spot by the car was empty. "You really need to come outside," the man in front of me said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening whisper. "Right now." That was the moment the primal fear kicked in. I realized he wasn't waiting for the car to be fixed. He was stalling. He was keeping my attention fixed on the front counter. "I said no," I stammered, taking a step back toward the office door behind the counter. "You need to leave." The man didn't move. He just stared at me with a cold, dead expression. "Don't be stupid," he muttered. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed from the back of the store. My heart hammered against my ribs. The layout of the station was simple: the front entrance and a heavy steel door in the back storage room that led to the alley where the dumpsters were. That door was always double-locked. Thump, thump, screech. Someone was trying to force the back door open. It sounded like they were using a crowbar, jamming it into the frame and heaving with all their weight. I looked at the man at the counter. He wasn't nervous anymore. He was smiling, a cruel, tight-lipped smile. "Sounds like the back door is open," he taunted. "Maybe you should go check it." He wanted me to leave the safety of the bulletproof glass enclosure. He wanted to flush me out, either out the front door into his arms or into the back room where his friend was breaking in. It was a pincer move. I didn't go to the back. Instead, I grabbed the landline phone and the can of bear mace I kept under the register, something my manager told me never to bring to work.
"I'm calling 911, I screamed, holding the phone up so he could see it. "The cops patrol this highway. They're 2 minutes away." The banging on the back door intensified. The metal groaned under the pressure. I could hear wood splintering from the frame. "Open this door," the man at the counter yelled, slamming his fist against the safety glass. He reached over, trying to grab the handle of the partition door, but I had already thrown the deadbolt. "They're coming," I lied, shouting as loud as I could. "Get out!" For a second, I thought he was going to try to smash through the glass, but then the sound of a siren, faint and probably miles away on the highway, drifted through the night air. It was pure luck, but it was enough. The man's face twisted in rage. He looked toward the back of the store and whistled, a sharp, piercing sound. "Let's go!" he yelled. He turned and sprinted out the front door. The banging at the back stopped instantly. I watched on the monitors as the man in the hoodie ran from behind the building. They both jumped into the beat-up sedan. The engine, which supposedly had a dead battery, roared to life instantly, and they peeled out of the lot, tires screeching against the asphalt. I locked myself in the manager's office and didn't come out until the state troopers arrived 10 minutes later. When they checked the back entrance, the heavy steel door was warped. The wood around the frame was chewed up. The police said that, judging by the marks, they were using a heavy-duty pry bar. If the door had been any weaker, or if I had been foolish enough to walk outside to help, I wouldn't be telling the story. They never caught the guys. The car had stolen plates, but I learned my lesson. I quit the next day. If you're ever working alone and someone tries too hard to get you to step outside, listen to your gut. Stay inside, lock the doors, and don't be a hero. It might just save your life.
I moved into the complex on 4th Street because it was cheap and, more importantly, quiet. Or so I thought. It was an old brick building with thick walls, the kind of place where people kept to themselves. I was looking for solitude after a bad breakup, a place where I could just go to work, come home, and sleep. But the guy in apartment 3B ruined that from the very first day. His name was Elias. I met him while I was hauling boxes up the stairs. Every time I walked past his unit, his front door was wide open. Not just cracked, wide open. He would sit in an armchair positioned perfectly so he could see the entire hallway. He was an older man, maybe in his 60s, with a gaunt face and eyes that seemed too big for his sockets. "New blood," he said the first time I passed. He didn't blink. "You look hungry. I have stew." I gave a polite, awkward laugh. "No thanks, I'm just moving in. Maybe later." But later became every single day. If I came home at 5 p.m., Elias was there, watching from his open door. If I came home at midnight, the door was still open, the yellow light from his lamp spilling into the corridor, casting his long shadow across my path. "Dinner?" he'd ask. "Breakfast? Just a coffee?" "No thank you, Elias," I'd say, unlocking my door as fast as possible. "You shouldn't be alone," he would whisper as I slammed my door shut. It started getting weird about 2 weeks in. I began noticing things inside my apartment, small things. I'm a creature of habit. I leave my keys in a bowl by the door and my mail on the counter. One Tuesday, I came home to find my keys on the kitchen table. I thought I was just losing my mind from stress. Another time, the bathroom door was closed, though I always leave it open for ventilation. Then came the noises. I live alone, no pets, but at night, lying in bed, I swear I could hear the floorboards creaking in the living room. It wasn't the settling of the building. These were rhythmic, heavy creaks, like footsteps. Creak, pause, creak, pause. I would grab my baseball bat, burst into the living room, and find nothing. The windows were locked. The front door was bolted. I convinced myself it was just the pipes or the neighbors upstairs. But the breaking point was last Thursday. It was 3 a.m. I was dead asleep when a sound jolted me awake. It was distinct, sharp, and terrifyingly close. Knock, knock, knock. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. The knocking hadn't come from the front door of the apartment. It had come from my bedroom door. The bedroom door that I always locked before going to sleep, a habit I picked up from living in bad neighborhoods.
I sat up, gripping the sheets, staring at the handle in the darkness. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I held my breath, praying I had dreamt it. Then, slowly, agonizingly slowly, the brass handle began to turn. It rotated to the right, hit the locking mechanism, and stopped. Then it rattled gently, as if someone was testing the strength of the lock. "Elias," I whispered, my voice trembling. I don't know why I said his name. Instinct, maybe. The handle stopped moving instantly. I heard a soft exhale on the other side of the wood, not a gasp, but a sigh of disappointment. Then, the soft padding of footsteps moving away from the door, fading into the living room. I didn't sleep. I pushed my dresser against the door and sat there with my phone, dialing 911, then hanging up, thinking they'd call me crazy. There was no sign of forced entry. How could anyone be inside?
The next morning, I waited until the sun was fully up before I moved the dresser. I grabbed my bat and swept the apartment. Empty. The front door was still locked from the inside. The chain was still on. I thought I was going insane. Was I sleepwalking? Hallucinating? I couldn't stay there. I packed a bag and went to a motel across town. I needed distance. I stayed away for 3 days trying to rationalize what happened. I told myself it was a nightmare, a vivid, lucid dream brought on by the stress of the creepy neighbor. By Sunday evening, I felt foolish. I was paying for a motel I couldn't afford. I decided to go back, pack properly, and maybe stay with a friend, but I needed my things first. I drove back to the apartment building around 8 p.m. When I walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor, I braced myself for Elias. But for the first time since I moved in, apartment 3B's door was closed. I felt a wave of relief. Maybe he was out. Maybe he was gone. I unlocked my door. The air inside the apartment felt stale, warm. It was quiet. I dropped my bag in the hallway and locked the door behind me. Double bolt, chain, everything. Get a grip, I muttered to myself. I walked down the short hall toward the living room to turn on the lights, but I didn't need to. The street lamp outside provided just enough illumination to see the silhouette. I stopped dead in my tracks. My blood turned to ice. Someone was sitting on my sofa. They were sitting perfectly still, hands folded in their lap, facing the hallway where I stood. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I saw the familiar outline of the gaunt face and the 2 large eyes. It was Elias. He wasn't startled. He didn't jump. He just sat there, comfortable, as if he lived there. "You've been gone a long time," Elias said. His voice was calm, almost fatherly. "I was worried. Dinner got cold." "How?" I choked out, stumbling back. "How did you get in here? The locks?" Elias smiled. In the pale light, it looked like a rictus of a corpse. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key. He held it up, letting it catch the light. "The landlord is a friend of mine. Or, well, he keeps a spare set in the basement office. It's very easy to copy them if you have enough time." He stood up slowly. "I've been waiting for you to come back. I don't like eating alone, and I've spent so many nights here watching you sleep. It feels wrong when the bed is empty." Watching me sleep. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The moved keys, the open bathroom door, the footsteps. He hadn't just broken in once. He had been coming in for weeks, sitting in the corner, watching. "Get out!" I screamed, backing up until my back hit the front door. "Don't be rude," Elias said. His voice dropped an octave. He reached behind the sofa and pulled out something long and metallic. A kitchen knife. My kitchen knife. I didn't wait to see what he planned to do. I fumbled with the locks behind me, my fingers shaking so bad I almost dropped the chain. Elias lunged, moving faster than an old man should. I threw the door open and scrambled into the hallway just as he slashed at the air where I had been standing. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away at a gas station. When the police arrived, Elias was gone.
He had returned to his own apartment, locked the door, and pretended to be asleep. But they found the evidence. Inside my apartment, hidden in the back of my closet, they found a small sleeping bag and wrappers from food I never bought. And on his phone, which they seized later, were hours of video footage. Videos of me sleeping. Videos of me watching TV filmed from the crack of the hallway door. Videos taken from inside my bedroom when I was unconscious. I moved out the next day. I broke the lease, lost my deposit. I didn't care. I live in a house now, with a high-tech security system and cameras in every room. But sometimes when I'm lying in bed and the house settles, I hear a creak, and I can't help but stare at the door handle, waiting for it to turn.
I've lived in the suburbs my whole life. You get used to a certain level of safety. Paved roads, manicured lawns, the comforting hum of distant traffic. It feels sterile, controlled. But people forget that these developments are often built right on the edge of the wild, and sometimes the wild pushes back. It happened last November. I had just adopted a golden retriever mix named Buster. He was full of energy, so our evening walks were getting longer and longer. That Tuesday, the weather was unseasonably warm, so I decided to explore a new housing development about 2 miles north of my house. It was called Shadow Creek, one of those places where they bulldozed a massive forest but ran out of money halfway through. So you had perfectly paved streets and streetlights, but no houses, just empty lots of tall grass and dense woods surrounding everything. We lost track of time. I was listening to a podcast, zoning out, watching Buster sniff every weed. By the time I checked my watch, the sky was already bruising a deep purple. The sun had dipped below the tree line, and the temperature dropped instantly. "All right, buddy, let's head back," I said, tugging on the leash. Buster didn't move. Usually, he's a happy-go-lucky dog, wagging his tail at fire hydrants, but now he was frozen. His hackles, the fur along his spine, were standing straight up. A low, guttural growl vibrated in his throat. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring into the tall, dry grass of an empty lot to our left. "Come on, it's just a bunny," I said, trying to pull him. Then I saw it. About 20 feet away, half hidden in the brush, a pair of eyes reflected the dying light. They were yellow, unblinking, and set too far apart to be a domestic cat. My first thought was coyote. We have them in the area. Usually they're skittish, scrawny things that run if you clap your hands. "Hey, get out of here!" I shouted, waving my free arm. The eyes didn't blink. The creature stepped out of the grass onto the sidewalk. It was a coyote, but it was massive, far bigger than any I'd seen before. Its coat was matted and gray, its ribs showing through the fur, but its posture was confident. It didn't look scared. It looked calculating. I felt a prickle of unease on the back of my neck. "Let's go, buddy," I whispered. We started walking briskly back the way we came. The street lights flickered on, buzzing loudly in the silence. They were spaced too far apart, creating pools of light separated by long stretches of ink-black darkness. I glanced over my shoulder. The big coyote was following us. It wasn't running, it was trotting at a steady pace, keeping a precise distance of about 30 yards. Then, from the woods to my right, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold, a sharp yip-yip howl. It was answered immediately from the left side of the road, then from behind. I stopped and spun around. The big coyote had stopped too, but now 2 more stepped out from the shadows behind him. I looked to my left, another pair of yellow eyes watching from a drainage ditch. I looked to my right, movement in the trees. We weren't being followed by a stray. We were being herded. Panic is a dangerous thing. It makes you want to run, but I knew that if I ran, I would trigger their chase instinct. You can't outrun a pack. "Stay close," I told Buster. He was whining now, pressing his body against my legs, tripping me up. The leash was slick with sweat in my hand. We were still a mile from the main road. The unfinished development felt like a maze. Every street looked the same, empty lots, darkness, and the clicking of claws on pavement. Click, click, click.
The sound was multiplying. The pack was getting bolder. They weren't just behind us anymore. I saw shadows darting ahead, cutting across the lawns to flank us. They were communicating with those high-pitched yips and barks, a language of coordination. They were cutting off our escape routes. I reached into my pocket for my phone to call someone, anyone, but my hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. No signal. Of course, we were in a dead zone at the bottom of the valley. Suddenly, a coyote lunged from a driveway to my right. Buster screamed, a terrified, human-like sound, and snapped at it. The coyote danced back, grinning with a mouth full of sharp teeth. It was a feint, a test. They were testing our defenses. "Get back!" I roared, kicking out at the air. I looked around for a weapon, a stick, a rock, anything. There was nothing but manicured asphalt and dirt. The circle tightened. There were at least 8 of them now. They moved in silence, their bellies low to the ground. The big gray one, the alpha, stood right in the middle of the road, blocking our path forward. He let out a low growl that vibrated in my chest. We were backed against a cul-de-sac, the end of the road. I realized with a horrific clarity that this was their plan all along. They had steered us here. I backed up until my heels hit the curb of the turnaround. Buster was trembling violently, peeing on the pavement in fear. The pack fanned out in a semicircle, cutting off the only exit. They stopped yipping. The silence was worse. It meant the hunt was over, and the meal was about to begin. The alpha took a step forward, then another. I could smell them now, a musky, rotting scent of wet fur and old meat. "Help!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Somebody help!" The scream echoed uselessly off the empty trees. The alpha crouched, muscles coiling in its hind legs. I grabbed Buster's collar, preparing to, I don't even know what. Kick? Bite? Die? The alpha launched itself. At that exact second, the world exploded in white light. High beams, blinding, searing LED high beams crested the hill of the cul-de-sac entrance, followed by the roar of a V8 engine. A black pickup truck came flying around the corner, horn blaring, a long, deafening blast. Honk! The alpha twisted in midair, landing awkwardly and scrambling back. The sudden light and noise broke the trance. The pack scattered like roaches. In seconds, they dissolved back into the tall grass in the woods, leaving only the swaying weeds to prove they were ever there. The driver skidded to a halt right in front of us. The window rolled down, and an old man in a camo hat leaned out with a shotgun racked in the passenger seat. "Get in!" he yelled. "Throw the dog in the back and get in!" I didn't argue. I practically threw Buster into the cab and scrambled in after him. As I slammed the door, I looked out the window. At the edge of the light, just before the darkness took over again, I saw the alpha. He was standing on the ridge, watching the truck. He didn't look scared. He looked patient. The driver drove us back to the main road without saying much. He told me he lived in the old farmhouse nearby and had heard the yipping change from hunting to attacking. "You're lucky, son. They've been getting hungry lately. The construction took their deer. Now they take what they can get." I haven't walked in that development since. In fact, I don't walk Buster at night anymore, period. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed and the wind blows from the north, I can hear them yipping in the distance. It sounds like laughter. They know I'm still here, and they know I have to come out eventually.